That right there is a 4-cylinder C-Class with 680 brake horsepower of F1 technology that AMG refers to as a C63. But having owned 12 C63s, that's a statement that I wholly reject. Smash! That's better. That's what I call a real C63. Welcome back to RBR, guys. I'm Raz, your super-powered host, sometimes known as Mr.AMG, because I'm absolutely addicted to the emotion-spiking cars that AMG are best known for making, none more so than the C63, which I think is the purest AMG. Or at least it used to be, because our new car has a crisis of identity, completely missing out on the main notes that make up what it means to be a C63. So today, you and I are going to celebrate perhaps one of the best ever versions of that car with this C63 S Coupe, the outgoing facelift. So what makes up the identity of a C63? Well, no one actually knows this better than AMG themselves, and I'm going to read out a couple of excerpts from the 2018 press release of this very car. Unique offering in segment with V8 bi-turbo engine. So the only car with a V8, it's a big selling point. Muscular character of the rear-wheel driven icon, rear-wheel drive. Powerful V8 engines, thrilling driving dynamics have turned the top-of-the-range models from the C-Class from AMG into best sellers. So we've got the V8, we've got rear-wheel drive, we've got emotion, and we've got driving dynamics. That's always been the C63 AMG. You look at the new car, all it's got is dynamics, and it hasn't got the other three, which are so important. If anything, it's kind of like a capable performance car, but one that is cosplaying as a C63 at a Halloween party. So this is a tough one, and I think actually a lot of brands are going to struggle with this idea of identity as they try to chase these harsher sustainability targets, while a lot of driving icons and brands, I think they're just going to lose their identity and still try to convince you that they are something that they are not. To be fair to AMG as well, because I love them, I've got a really good relationship with everyone over there. The engineers and the people there, they understand, but they were taken down this path because they're part of Mercedes-Benz, and the whole company has sustainability targets, right? AMG themselves know that this is their best seller. Again, from that press release, look, the AMG C-Class is our best-selling model series and therefore a key cornerstone of our company's success in recent years, okay? Compare that to the current car, where I know tons of salesmen and dealers all around the world being in the position that I'm in, and I do not know one singular person who's either bought one or sold one, which is crazy. From a car that was the company's cornerstone, like think of something like the 911 at Porsche not selling. You know, this is unheard of. And I think whichever way you cut it, the higher-ups at Mercedes took a massive risk pushing AMG to go down this direction with their bestseller. And if anything, it smells of a bit of arrogance to me that you think you know better than your biggest customer base for a brand. That being said, today is all about our outgoing coupe, and we're going to celebrate it. It's such a great example of C63 because even till today, the components used within this car are still being used in today's cars. So it's super relevant. So what we're going to do first is break down what lies underneath the skin of this car. The first and most important thing is that glorious engine, the 4-litre bi-turbo that started life within this generation of C63 and the then new AMG GT. It's basically the fusion of two A45 engines in one block with a hot V setup in the middle, and it's such a great engine that the final variation, if you like, of this, or the most powerful one ever so far, is the one that found its way in AMG's GT Black Series in up to 730 brake horsepower. Still a shared, engine. And in fact, even our brand new GT today is a modified version of that engine. So super capable, super relevant engine still till today. And you must remember that this engine came in at a time where we were so fearful of downsizing, first from 6.2 to 5.5, then down to 4 litre. We thought, honestly, it was going to sound like crap. But boy, were we wrong. Bear in mind, this is a 2022 car with OPFs and everything in it, and it still sounds that bloody good. So we had two variants as well in terms of power throughout the 8 years that this car was around. The first was the standard C63 with 476 brake horsepower, 650 Newton meters, and a 0-60 quota of around about 4 seconds. Then we had the S model, which gave us 510 brakes, 700 Newton meters, and a 0-60 of 3.9. Do not sleep on the standard car either. If you've looked at Chris Harris's review, indeed, of the standard one, it's not a car that you want to sleep on, because as a daily vehicle, it does 90% of what the S model does. So both really thrilling and fantastic variants. Apart from the engine, we have the wide body, but then an extended wide rear as well, which is unique to this car. The only other AMGs to do this in history have been the AMG GTR and the C63 Black Series. So we've got a wide front, which is quite normal for AMG. We've got the power domes on the bonnet. We've got the AMG specific grille. We've got aerodynamic package. We have staggered wheel setup of 19 and 20, just like the GT had back then. So a truly, truly stunning car. But let's talk beyond that. Let's talk under the skin. First, we have the gearbox. Initially, it was the 7-speed DCT with it now pre-facelift. This got upgraded to the 9-speed MCT with wet clutch starter, as we find in our AMGs today. Then we have electronically limited rear slip differential, which came as standard. We also had active engine mounts, just like the AMG GTS had. We had AMG speed sensitive steering. We have AMG's adaptive suspension with active dampers. We have an upgraded ESP system with a 9-stage traction control, as we found in AMG's GTR. We've even got AMG Dynamics, as you find in the latest cars, able to manage that ESP system depending on what mode you are, absolutely separate of the mode as well. And inside we have an AMG specific interior with AMG dials to control the driving settings on the left and your driving mode on the right. We've got AMG track pace for recording all your track information or drag races, 0-60s, etc. Unique AMG readout screens. We've got the IWC physical clock and the fantastic AMG bucket seats that really sign off a special interior. Now you look at all of these components, they're all going to sound so familiar to you because all the recent AMGs that I've spoken about use basically, previous versions of these very same components. Yes, they've been altered, but fundamentally speaking the same ones, which is why it makes it such a great car to celebrate today with you guys, but also a really relevant car going forward should you want to buy one. The prices have really hit the floor. I don't think they're going to get any lower right now. This is the time to buy a pre-facelift or a facelift C63, which is insane bang for buck. And if you think about it in that way, the 110k you'd spend on the new car, you could buy almost 3 of these amazing cars. Finance deals are pretty good these days as well on these cars because the residual values are strong. Any variation of the 205, any variation, to be fair, of the 204 as well, now is the time to get one. This might be one of the last pure AMGs, or maybe the last pure AMG. That's why we're celebrating it. Now, just before we head out for a drive, one point is that these cars are actually very tunable as well. Now, let's say you want to buy one, but you do want to keep up with modern cars, you want to keep up with that 680 brake horsepower full cylinder, why not tune it? And today's sponsor for this video is RaceChip, who might be the best solution because A, they've been around for ages, it's all built in Germany, and you even do get in some countries an engine warranty with their systems. Let me talk to you a little bit today about RaceChip. So guys, here is the RaceChip GTS Black, which is their top version, and this is all in-house developed by them, made in Germany. Again, they've been doing this for years, and in this version you can get an additional 92 brake horsepower and 130 Newton meters of torque, which brings this car just over 600 bhp, which should be plenty for keeping up with cars going into the future. Or you could go for their box below, which is the RS box, and that will give you 74 brake horsepower and 108 Newton meters. Either way, it's easy enough to plug and play and install yourself, as most do, or you can make use of their vast dealer network who can get it done for you. Depending on country, you do get a year warranty on your engine as well, which is fantastic. They actually have an app as well, which is really useful because you can change the tune then on the fly. There is an extra charge for doing that, but I really can't think of anyone else who's giving you that kind of control on the fly. And as I said, loads of different AMG models you could get this for, loads of other different manufacturers as well. Like for example, on my M3 Touring with the GTS Black, you could add around 100 horsepower and 100 Newton meters additional as well. So it's really good. And of course, as RaceChip are our sponsor today, as RBR viewers, you're going to get a great deal by using the code on the screen and use the link in the description below. It's just a way, again, which I've thought of doing with my car as well, that if I want it to remain relevant going forward, a little bit more power that is configurable would actually be really, really useful. Right guys, now let's head out. Let's discover together what makes this car so special for all of us, and why it's such a pure AMG and why it has such a special place in our hearts. So the first and most important thing that any C63 owner will ever tell you about why they love their car is the sound. And the facelift C63 has this thing called AMG Emotion Start, which sadly, I'm sorry to tell you, is something that you'll no longer find in newer cars thanks to the EU and their stupid regulations. So this current gen of cars are the last to have it. What it is, you press the button and you hold the paddle for a nice loud startup. And you get that every single time, of course. Pop on the exhaust button, exhaust on or else, and off we go. Now guys, one of the most pleasurable things about driving a C63 as a daily was staying in comfort mode and enjoying the V8 engine. So you just stay in comfort, you pop on the exhaust, and the nice thing about the C63, you get this wonderful loud rumble, and even in this facelift OPF version of the car, look here, I'm just doing 30 miles per hour, and you get this consistent, nice rumble of the V8. And it's part of the reason why AMG touted the V8 as a unique thing in segment, because a C63 owner doesn't need to drive crazily to enjoy the emotion of their car. Even if I go into Sport Plus, and I want to invoke a bit of sound out of the car while doing normal speeds, it's coming off the throttle. And the car gives you such a beautiful melody. And that's not like the new car. You know, the new car, you have to drive fast to really enjoy the dynamism of it. And it has no emotion in any low speeds. And for a C63 customer, that is killer. That's the end of the story. And the gap between them increases when you start to pile on some speed in the old C63. Where the car begins to feel and sound like a lion that's been strapped to a rocket. Now the good thing is we're talking about buying one of these as a topic in this video. Remember, this one is literally the last, it's the final edition. This is as quiet as it gets, and even this, as you can hear, it's more than enough. You get a wonderful sound in the interior, lovely pops and bangs, and when it drives past, again, it does sound like a dinosaur on a rocket. So sound, emotion, everything on point. Then we have the actual engine itself. It's not all about sound when it comes to this engine, okay? Yes, it's one of the best sounding V8s, but it's not just that. The other great thing about this engine is how it feels so natural. It was always tuned to feel like a naturally aspirated engine. The power is gradual, it's measured, it's not boosty like a lot of turbo engines. You're only getting the best of both worlds, getting the benefit of turbocharging and still having the nice power curve of a naturally aspirated engine. That paired to our 9-speed gearbox, it's a really good gearbox. It's one that they've really improved. When it first came out, it was so laggy versus the 7-speed DCT. Now, instant shifts. And of course, look, this is why we find this 9-speed multi-clutch in all of our current flagship AMGs, including the GT. So it's a great gearbox paired to an even better engine, and all of that just makes for such an enjoyable experience. You talk about speed, C63 is never known for speed, okay? It's rear-wheel drive, 510 brake horsepower, right? It's not trying to break any launch control records with those figures. Instead, what it is power that is usable every day, and it's not overpowered for the road. And the nice thing about that is you can squeeze every ounce of performance out of this on a normal B road, and that is why it makes for such an enticing daily, because you get to enjoy 90% of the C63 all the time. And then we come to dynamics. We've got AMG's active ride control suspension with the active engine mounts that we found in the AMG GTS, and that alongside the rear-wheel drive format makes for a very interesting combination. Long story short, this car ends up feeling the most dynamic AMG underneath the AMG GT. It's literally the best you can get without going to a 2-seat sports car that's rivaling 911. Even today, AMG speed-sensitive steering knocks spots off the M3 in its newer generation. Just the simple steering feedback you get when going faster or going slower is still so good in this electronic system. Just hats off to AMG even back then. But of course, this is a much older system, and you cannot compare it to something like the M3 that frankly feels like a race car when you dial it up, and will run absolute circles around this now. Perhaps not absolute circles, maybe I'm exaggerating a little, but it does feel definitely a generation ahead. But of course the M3 almost feels like a 911, you know, it's 8 years newer than that car. So this still equips itself, like I said, it's as close as you'll get to the previous gen AMG GT. It's really dynamic, the steering is amazing, and then you've got the rear wheel drive format, which this car is trying to kill you half the time, which you might think, oh, it's a thing against the C63 because the new one's got 4MATIC and the M3 has X-Drive, etc. But no, because you have to respect the car more and you have to drive it with a certain, you know, a certain nuance, you actually begin to love the car that much more. If anything, all of these things combined, the fact that the power is just at the right point to extract the most fun out of it on the road. It's not chasing speed. The fact that it's a back to basics, old school rear wheel drive V8 Coupe, it begins to remind me of great cars like the base 911 Carrera. That's what this C63 S Coupe of now the previous generation reminds me of. And what greater compliment could I pay a two-door, four-seat coupe than that? And the nice thing is, when you don't want to drive fast anymore and you want to use this more as a daily, and you want to, for example, I'm on a motorway now, I'm going to stick on driving assistance package, and the car will drive itself just like an up-to-date Mercedes. We've got ambient lighting in this car, we've got Apple CarPlay, all of the things that you liken to a modern car still within this. So really, really good breadth of ability in terms of being a daily, nice and comfortable. It's got that whole Mercedes-Benz side ticked off nicely in the 205 Coupe as well. And while today is obviously a farewell video, I hope it's not for you. I hope that now, having seen this, you'll think about welcoming one of these in your life. A car that absolutely matches today's best performance cars in a way that will bring you even more emotion. It costs half as much as most new EVs do these days, or at least a third of what the new C63 does. And seems like it really is going to be the last pure AMG Hammer Coupe V8 rear-wheel drive beauty. And whether you decide 204 or you decide 205, I just want you to decide to get one. Because I've had 12, and the reason I've had 12, being Mr.AMG, is I just cannot get enough of this car. So guys, I hope you really enjoyed this episode of RBI. If you have, please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.